July. And new polling shows more Americans are planning to celebrate the holiday this year, but still with some hesitation. According to a new Monmouth University poll, 54% of adults plan to attend a July 4th barbecue. That's still down from the pre-pandemic number of 69%. Even fewer said they had plans to see a fireworks show, just 26% compared to 51% 2 years ago. And those 4th of July parades could look a little smaller this year as well, with only 18% of Americans planning to attend. Willie?
Let's talk more about this with the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser. Also with us, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us here in New York City.
It's good to be in New York City. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the 4th of July. This has been a date circled on people's calendars for some time now, including the president, who would hope to have 70% of the country vaccinated. White House announcing they'll fall a little bit short of that goal. What does it look like in Washington right now? You lifted most or all restrictions back a couple of weeks ago. What's the 4th going to look like in D.C.?
Well, D.C. is open. Let me be real clear about that. And we want people to come and enjoy the nation's fireworks. We're celebrating the nation's birthday. The president announced about a week ago that the fireworks in the National Mall he would be hosting. And so we're looking forward to it. I was just looking at your poll. I'll be doing all of those things on July 4th.
Me too.
Barbecue, parade, and fireworks in D.C. And we have hit, and our whole region has hit, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia has hit the 70% goal for adults being vaccinated. So we're very proud of that.
So that vaccination question, that's great news that you've reached 70%. What is your sense of who is still out there, perhaps persuadable in terms of getting the vaccine? You're doing well there, but if you look across the country, particularly in southern states, that's a real problem. They're at 30%. How do you get that message to people that this is important, not just for them personally, but for the country to get back to where it wants to be?
Well, we just have to keep talking to people, address their fears, because people have some real fears. But we also have to show them that this is how you get open. The vaccine is effective, and we're clearly driving down our cases. We had a weekend in D.C. where we only had 28 cases, and we have had no deaths from COVID over the last several days. And so that's where we all need to be. The world now is not set up for the unvaccinated. We were closed for 15 months, and we had social distancing and people wearing masks. That's not the case now. So you put yourself at real risk, your family at risk, and the nation's reopening at risk if you don't get vaccinated.
I noticed, Rev, that they had Dr. Fauci literally knocking on doors in D.C. the other day to get the message out.
Yes.
And I thought that was good. Let me ask you.
He's a real star, by the way, on the doors all over.
Superstar, no doubt about it. But let me ask you, because I know that you were very, very clear on keeping health as a priority during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We had March down there. You gave us so many restrictions. Every other minute I was saying, is Mayor Bowser going to clear this? So for you to come out of it, you were convinced that things would be fine. But during the pandemic, we lost a lot of small businesses. How did that impact Washington, D.C., and how do you help bring some of those small businesses back in the district?
Well, thanks for that question, Al. And our residents and businesses sacrificed a lot. And because they did, we've crushed the virus, and we're crushing it because people are getting vaccinated, and that's hugely important. But part of the reason why I'm here is to talk about bringing travel back and having people who are around the D.C. region come to D.C. to enjoy monuments and museums, pools and parks, all of which we have, our gorgeous nightlife scene and arts and culture scene. And bringing our visitors and workers back is what is going to help our small businesses the most. And that's what I see here in New York City, and that's what we are going to see in Washington. Our workers coming back downtown and our visitors coming back to D.C. And in some ways, this is the best time to visit because you don't have as many crowds in the museums and monuments, but you have all of our great hospitality workers that are in our hotels and restaurants, and you can have a really amazing time in D.C. We took the Amtrak. I'm going to the Moynihan train hall this afternoon to tour with some New York officials because we want to do the same thing at Union Station in Washington, D.C.
Mika?
All right. Madam Mayor, it's hard not to, as we prepare to celebrate our country, not to think of what happened on January 6th, and to have a moment of pause at the very least. It's another issue that's impacting Washington, and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is preparing to select members of Congress, including a Republican, to investigate the January 6th Capitol insurrection. She introduced legislation yesterday that would create a select committee. She would have the power to appoint 8 members to the panel. 5 members would be selected and approved by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. The chair of the panel would have subpoena power, meaning that Democrats could seek to compel the testimony of aides and lawmakers. According to an aide of Speaker Pelosi, the Speaker is, quote, seriously considering appointing a Republican with one of her unilateral picks. Outspoken Trump critics, Congressman Adam Kinzinger and Congresswoman Liz Cheney, are said to be in the running. Neither of them have ruled out being involved. The House is going to be holding a procedural vote on the measure today. A full House vote is expected tomorrow. How important, Muriel Bowser, do you think it is to follow through on this commission and to find out not just what happened that day, every aspect of it, a lot of which we've seen, a lot that we haven't, but to every aspect of what led up to it?
Well, Mika, I will tell you, the very day after the insurrection of January 6th, I went out and talked to my residents. And I recommended that day that we have a 9/11 style commission to investigate what happened. We saw up close and personal some failures of our whole system, and I think it's important that those failures are examined so that they never happen again. I do think it's important as much as possible to take the politics out of it. And that's why we thought that even a bipartisan commission and even having non-lawmakers lead the commission, in our view, would be the best thing to do. We participated already, I think, in 3 or 4 hearings at the Congress. We will be there to participate when asked. But I think it's important for our country at a time when power is transitioning. We saw up close how vulnerable we can be as a nation. So we have to take very seriously getting to the bottom of it, but also the people involved that you see when you show these pictures are held responsible. But anybody who's further up the chain should be held responsible too. But we also want people to know that this is not the burning image we want you to have of Washington, D.C. Because we are a city of about 700,000 people. It's safe to come to your nation's capital and see those monuments and museums. Go to the Capitol to visit with your lawmakers, to talk to them about moving on infrastructure, for example, which is so important to our comeback, so that we, as I've mentioned, can remake our Union Station as well. And there's an opportunity with this infrastructure bill that's being discussed right now for cities like mine to compete for those infrastructure dollars that's going to make that comeback real. We're talking about the comeback of our nation, but we have to make the comeback real by making the types of investments that will put people back to work in good paying jobs and help us rebuild our infrastructure.
As you know too well, Mayor Bowser, crime is up in big cities.
Yeah.
Washington, New York City, where we are now.
Yeah.
What's your view of why that's happening now? And what is the solution to the problem?
I don't think there's a single reason why we see crime going up. There rarely is. And our approach is to attack it with everything that we have. That includes law enforcement, but it also includes community violence interruption. And that's been our focus. So I just had a long briefing with the chief of police about gun violence in the city, where our detectives sit down and go over with me every open case so we can figure out what's going on. We're unique in the system, as you know, so we have a lot of federal folks who prosecute D.C. crime. I had to talk to them about getting open, making sure the U.S. attorneys are fully open, the court systems are fully open, so people who need to be held accountable are held accountable. But also Susan Rice came to visit our violence interruption office, where we have violence interrupters going out in communities to try to identify beefs before they turn violent. You'll always hear me say that we have to do something about the guns that are running up and down I-95, coming in from all states into D.C., and too many people having too easy access to firearms.
How do you thread the needle between those that clearly want to see dealing with gun violence and dealing with the rise, the uptick in violence in some cities, including the district, but at the same time are concerned about excessive force by police? And we have the George Floyd bill right there in Congress that's pending in the Senate and other things. You have those that are saying defund the police. As a mayor, how do you thread the needle between police accountability and also making sure that the citizens work with you and the police in trying to bring down gun violence?
Absolutely. You can't have safe neighborhoods without good police or communities who trust police. And that's what we've been working on in D.C. for over 20 years, and we continue to work on it. And our police chief is committed to it. So one thing is to make sure we're recruiting people from our neighborhoods that look like our city and that want to make our city safe. We train our officers and we hold our officers accountable.